Hey guys, welcome to the Daily Word Bible Study, a plain and simple, book by book, chapter by chapter, verse by verse study through the entire Bible. We are in Isaiah chapter 20, and I wanted to finish chapter 20 along with the prophecies against some of the nations, and one including Egypt. But there was something that came up that I wanted to go further in chapter 20, which is a very short chapter. Now, keep this in mind, chapters and verses are not inspired. They were added because of the translators. So the translators decided to give these divisions here, the chapter and verse divisions. Nothing inspiring about them. In a lot of cases, sometimes they don't even make sense. But anyway, it is what it is. So let's get into it. And I'm going to go back and like I say, and deal with chapter 20 and then go on from there. It says in that year. Now, again, so when he says in the year, I'm sorry, let me kind of got ahead of myself. In the year that the chief commander sent by Sargon, king of Assyria, came to Ashdod and attacked and captured it. During that time, the Lord has spoken through Isaiah, son of Amos, saying, now, before I want to go forward here, is that what's interesting about this, uh, um, prophecy, it's going to reveal something, and I'm taking license here because, especially when I see a lot of people today who call themselves prophets, right? It's a title, narcissistic title that a lot of preachers today like to heap on themselves. It makes them look good. They wear a fancy little robe. They wear a fancy little garb. But back in the day, we used to have a saying that a lot of people are talking loud and saying nothing. Now, a lot of people get excited about these little so-called prophets. But here is a true prophet. And one of the things about true prophet is that they will always speak the word of the Lord. And they will speak the word of the Lord whether it's good or whether it's bad. These so-called prophets, and I'm going to say they're false prophets today. And I know I'm being vague because I don't have a problem with naming them. But here's the problem is that the list is so long. Okay? But if you look at the characteristics of these so-called prophets today, they all fall short. That's why they speak smooth words, motivational words, but they never speak the truth. And when I say truth, like for example, what would be really like. So for example, we just had a hurricane that hit Florida. Where were the prophets at that time? Why did none of the prophets, stand up and go, yay, yay, thus saith the Lord, this hurricane would do such and such damage, and blah, 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 blah. They don't. Now, sometimes they'll come after the fact. After the fact, they'll come. But they will never, ever speak out in terms of definitive prophecies here. And but I want to kind of prod that. I want to tease, for a moment. So verse 2, it says, during that time the Lord had spoken to Isaiah the son of Amos, saying, go, take off your sackcloth and remove your sandals from your feet. And he did so, going naked and barefoot. Now, when he says naked, he wasn't talking about him being what we will call butt naked. Okay? Uh, um, but basically, at best, maybe undergarments, taking off the undergarments. Okay. So, my thing would be this: why isn't any of the, why isn't God telling any of the prophets today to do any of that? Why isn't the prophets today doing that? Okay. And again, I will admit here that I am being presumption. I'm being petty. Okay. I'm being petty. All right. All right. So where am I at? Oh, okay. So he tells Isaiah to go naked. Now we see many signs. When we remember one sign, God told Hosea to marry a prostitute. When we get to Ezekiel, he's really going to take Ezekiel through. But even remember Isaiah, he was told to get busy with his wife, the prophetess, and they came up with some children. One of the children's name was No Compassion, Compassion. All these kinds of names that he would get the prophets to go through. All right. Um, um, uh, the word. Okay, so I meant to say something too before I go on. Ashdod is kind of the city, and it may have had a symbol of pagan or kind of a sign of pagan worship. Okay, I forgot to mention that. So it said during this time the Lord spoke to Isaiah the son of Amos, saying, "Go take off your sackcloth and remove the sandals from your feet." And he did so, going naked and barefooted. Now, by the way, when it says Isaiah the son of Amos, just by way of reminder, this is a lot of times how you're able to identify very specific people by their names. Okay, so Isaiah son of Amos, and they could be different from Isaiah son of whoever. All right, verse 3. The Lord said, "As my servant Isaiah has gone naked and barefooted 3 years as a sign and an omen against Egypt and Cush, so the king of Assyria will lead the captives of Egypt and the exiles of Cush, young and old alike, naked and barefoot, with bare buttocks, to Egypt's shame. Those who made Cush their hope and Egypt their boast will be dismayed and ashamed, and the inhabitants of this coastland will say on that day, Look, is what happened to those. This is what happened to those we relied on and fled to for help to rescue us from the king of Assyria. Now, how will we escape?" So, um, so remember Cush, which is another name for Ethiopia in the Bible here, and then Egypt, which is kind of interesting. Both of them are like northern African territories. So this is how far down Assyria reached into. So the idea is that God is using the Assyrian. Now, right here also tells us of the reputation of the Assyrians. Now you remember Jonah. Jonah, when God told Jonah, and as we were studying, you remember, as we were studying, we were studying this in a we put these Old Testament writings, the prophet writings, in a chronological order. I'm sorry, and so Jonah is his time is before Isaiah. However, um, when God told him to go to Assyria or Nineveh, which is the capital of Assyria, Jonah didn't want to go. You remember Jonah didn't want to go. That's why he fled. Um, and one of the reasons why he fled is because he actually wanted God, in his kind of twisted way, he wanted God to judge the Assyrians and destroy them. Which, again, I kind of shared at the time, which shows us Jonah kind of knew the Lord. But in a sense, he didn't know the Lord because he didn't know how merciful the Lord is. And as bad as the Assyrians were, Jonah wanted God to wipe them out. Hey, God, wipe them out, kill them, destroy them. And when God says, go preach to them, Jonah's thinking, oh my God, they might repent. And God would have mercy on them because God is merciful. So in his kind of twisted mind, if I run away, then they'll never hear the Gospels, and then therefore God won't reach them. Well, he found out, no, you cannot thwart the plan and counsel and purpose of God. So he ended up preaching and Nineveh repented. Now, what I want to say is that the Assyrians, and the reason why Jonah felt that way is because the Assyrians were known to be very brutal people. They were known to be extremely cruel. And so you see kind of this glimpse here how they would conquer people, they would put hooks in them and chains. They would strip the people, both women, children, and men, and then parade them to their hometowns, whatever, right? Naked. Okay? So this is what's going to happen to to Egypt and to the Ethiopians. Okay. All right. Verse 21 says, "An oracle against the desert by the sea, like storms that pass over the Negev. It comes from a desert, from a land of terror. A troubling vision is declared to me. The treacherous one acts the treacherous one acts treacherously, and the destroyer destroys. Advance, Elam, lay siege, you Medes, and I will put an end to all her groanings. Therefore, I am filled with anguish. Pain grips me like the pain of a woman in labor. I am too perplexed to hear, too dismayed to see. My heart staggers. Horror terrifies me. He has turned my last glimmer of hope into sheer terror. Prepare a table, spread out a carpet, eat and drink, rise up, you princes, and oil the shields. For the Lord has said to me, go, post a lookout, let him report what he sees. When he sees a rider, pairs of horsemen, riders on donkeys, riders on camels, he must pay close attention. Then the lookout reported, Lord, I stand on the watchtower all day, and I stay at my post all night. Look, riders come, horsemen in pairs. And he answered, saying, Babylon has fallen, all the images of her gods. They have been shattered around my people. Now, let's stop. This term, Babylon has fallen, we're going to see echo throughout Scripture, even in the book of Revelations. So again, when we see in the Old Testament, and we see now this language, this use of the language, Babylon has fallen, it helps us to understand when we get to, for example, Revelations, and I believe it's chapter 18. I believe it's chapter 18, 17 and 18. That the city then, at that time in Babylon, will be, it'll help us to define or interpret the prophecy. Okay? In other words, it's not literal Babylon, but it is 17 and 18, which would be the cities, the actually it seems to be the economy or the system of the world. Okay, the system of the world. All right. um, Now, what's amazing about this too is the idea that Babylon, notice 100, or from this perspective, over 200 years before the fall of Babylon. So in other words, when you think about Babylon and then you go through almost 70 years of Israel's captivity, that the Medes and Persians um, will conquer Israel. Now, what is amazing, go back, because he mentions this here. Where did I see it? Where he mentions the Medes, right? Where did I see that at? All right, here he is, in verse 2, right? It says, the treacherous one acts treacherously, and the destroyer destroys, the advanced Elam lay siege, you Medes. So right here is a prophecy where Babylon would be conquered by the Medes and the Persians. Now I say that because this is prophecy here. This is something that is said over 200 years, and God is continually saying it over 200 years before the fall of Babylon. Okay, verse 10 says, "My people who have been crushed on the threshing floor, I have declared to you what I have heard from the Lord of hosts, the God of Israel." An oracle against. Now let me stop before I get off. Well, let me finish up, and then I'll come back to this because this is kind of an amazing prophecy here. Okay, that Babylon, the great, and remember at the time, what would be different than Assyria, Egypt, mighty nations like that, is that Babylon is a world ruling kingdom that is going to fall to the Medes. And here we see this prophecy again 200 years before it happens, over 200 years. Verse 11, an oracle against Duma, one calls from Syria, watchman, what is left of the night? Watchman, what is left of the night? The watchman said, morning has come, also night. If you want to ask, come back again. An oracle against Arabia, in the desert brush, you were camp for the night. You were canvas. Your caravan, you caravans of Detamites, bring water for the thirsty. The inhabitants of the land of Tema meet the refugees with food, for they have fled from the swords, from the drawn swords, from the bow that is strung, and from the stress of battles. For the Lord has said this to me, within 1 year, as a hired worker count years, all the glory of Kedar will be gone. The remaining Kedarites archers will be Kedarites archers will be few in numbers, for the Lord, the God of Israel, has spoken. All right, so again, one of the most amazing things here, one of the most amazing things is this prophecy, and I never let critics of the Bible try to diminish prophecy. One, exact prophecies. Okay, that's what's amazing here. The Medes and the Persian, and again, as we're reading, remember we're reading the book of Isaiah. It has one timeline, then the book of Daniel, right? Again, it's so that's what I'm saying. This is so amazing here. The prophecies of Daniel, that prophesies the conquering of the Medes and Persians. Excuse me. All right, guys. Don't forget to like and share this video and subscribe to BP, the Bible Perspective. And as always, if you have a thought or comment, add it to the comment section below. All comments are welcome. Until next time, I'll see you then.